All right, so we are going to work on finding regression lines and correlation coefficients. And so I want to talk to you guys about a couple definitions up here at the top, and then we're going to do some work with our graphing calculators. Okay, so a regression line is just another way to describe a line of best fit for a data set. And what we're going to use as the correlation coefficient, I'm going to show you a little picture that's not on the note paper here in a second. Correlation coefficient, it describes the strength of the relationship between two variables. And I know I just wrote that kind of fast, so if you want to pause, you can, but I want to show you a picture for correlation coefficient. Okay, let me pull this up. Okay, so basically what you're going to do is you're going to have a data set, and these are different examples of just random data sets that are graphed in a coordinate plane to show you a correlation coefficient. Now, these will have an actual number associated with them, and I'll show you how to find that on the calculator today. But basically what's going on here in terms of the positive and negative that you see here, it's based on what type of slope would you have. So here's a data set in this first picture. You can see I'm going up and to the right, so that would have a positive slope. And you can see the points are really close to that line. A lot of them are on the line, so this is what we'd call strong positive correlation. This one here, the data points are still kind of going up in that positive direction up from left to right, but they're not as close to the line as the previous data set, so that's called a weak positive correlation. This next picture, you're going down from left to right, and so this would have a negative slope if we thought about this, and this is kind of like that first picture where the points are super close to that regression line, and so this is called a strong negative correlation because the points are really well represented by that line. This fourth picture is going to be kind of similar to this picture here, the second one, but it's going the points are going in a negative direction. We're going down from left to right, so they're not real close to the line. This is called a weak negative correlation. And then you guys can kind of compare these two to see this data set in the third picture is really close to the line. This one is a little, it's close to the line. It's better than this previous picture. So this is what they would call a moderate negative correlation. It's pretty close. It's not as good as this one, and it's not as bad as this one. And then here, the last picture, if I drew a trend line to try to represent that data points, it's all over the place. So there are situations where maybe your data does not have a correlation at all. So these are just some pictures. Okay, now back to what we're going to do. I'm going to have us create a scatter plot. So I've got a little data set here. This doesn't have any story attached to it or anything like that. Most of these will be word problems though. But just to start out, come over to the graph here and just kind of do the best of your ability to estimate the points. And I'm going to pause the video while I do that. Okay, so I plotted the points, and you guys can see this is going to have a negative correlation, and I would say this is pretty strong. These are going to be pretty close. You don't have to draw this on here, but if I tried to kind of do a good estimate of a regression line or a trend line for this, I just kind of try and do my best to kind of sketch something right in the middle, and you guys can see that this should be a strong negative correlation here. That's really close to the line. What I'm going to do is show you actually how to write the equation of the line using your calculator today. So if you want to grab out your graphing calculator, that is what we are going to work on, and I'm going to write the directions for this to the side so you can get back to it if you need to. So let me scooch this over. Okay. You guys can see actually what the graph is going to look like, and I want to be able to see the data points while I'm on here. So I'm just going to put a little piece of paper so I can kind of write the directions for this so you guys can see this. Okay, so obviously we're going to grab your calculator, and this direction set will work for an 83 or an 84. What you want to do is go ahead and turn your calculator on, of course. All right, and then what you're going to look for, we're going to input this data, and there's a button right here. It's kind of in the middle, the third one down, and it's going to say stat, and that's where you're going to start. So we're going to hit the stat button, and it's going to take you to this menu that looks like this, and you're just going to want the very first thing. So after you hit stat, you're just going to hit enter, and we are going to edit this. So I'm just hitting enter. You should see a screen like this pop up. If you don't, I will go over how to fix that in 1 second. Now, in L sub 1 there, this is where you want to put your X values. All right, and as you do this, I'm just going to type these X values. So I'm just going to type 1. After you hit each number, you have to hit enter, and then that'll take you down to the next line. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And for list 2, that's where you're going to put those Y values. Now to get to that, I'm just going to use these arrow keys right here, just go right over to the next column and put up the matching Y values. So the 120, 101, 87, let's see, 57, and 42. Okay, so we're entering those data values. And then I always just spot check here. I've only got 5 points, so it's not too bad to check. But, just make sure you didn't make a mistake typing, and make sure your X value and Y values line up as they appear in that table. Okay, after you have done that, you are going to hit that stat button again. And so that's right in the middle, kind of third button down here, kind of next to these arrow keys. Hit stat. Okay, now we are going to calculate this regression line. So I'm going to arrow over to the menu across the top here that says Calc. So just using my arrow key. And we want the line of best fit. So what you're looking for here is number 4. It says LinReg, which stands for linear regression. And remember, the regression is just the line of best fit. So you can arrow down to that, or you can type the number 4, whatever's easier for you, but you do need to hit enter. And then it'll bring up a screen. If you have an 83, it won't bring up a screen. If you have an 84, it will. You just want to have your X's be list 1, your Y's be list 2, and then don't worry about anything else here. Just keep hitting enter. And then this should display your line of best fit. Now, I know this is weird because it's not MX plus B. The way it's set up here, they write it as AX plus B. But really, A is just going to be the slope, and you can see that that's negative. And then my y-intercept is going to be B. That's the 141.4. So if you go back to the notes here, I'm just going to write that equation with those numbers subbed in. So as I was looking at it there, I've got y equals it'd be negative 20x plus 141.4. And then we're going to talk about how to find the correlation coefficient. Okay, now some of you may have seen this and some of you may not have seen the correlation coefficient actually on the screen when you did your regression. We used the letter R to represent that. I didn't see it on mine, and most calculators don't have it set up this way to start. So I'm just going to show you real quick how to be able to see the correlation coefficient. So if you didn't see R when you did your regression, like if your screen looked like mine, I'm going to show you this real quick. If you did see the R when you did the regression, then you're good. If you didn't, you're going to hit the mode button. It's going to be right here next to the second. And this is going to bring up a big complicated menu. What you want to come down to here is the little part that says stat diagnostics right there. Most calculators defaulted to be off. I'm just going to use the arrow key so that it's on. And what you do, just arrow over so that's highlighted, hit enter. And then if I arrow away from that, I can see that that is highlighted now, and so it's on. Okay, anytime you want to get out of a screen, if you're in it, you can just hit second and the button right next to it, that mode button, second quit, and that'll just take you back to the main screen. I hit that all the time. Now I'm going to walk you through how we did the regression one more time. We did stat, calc, and then down here number 4 for the linear regression. And just keep hitting enter till it shows up. And you guys will see now, maybe some of you before had this, maybe some of you didn't. The correlation coefficient is going to display on the screen. What we're interested in is just the R. You'll talk about R squared when you guys get to the next level of math, but the R for us, you can see this is negative 0.99. That is a super strong, I'm going to round that to the nearest hundredth there. That is a very strong negative correlation. If it was -1, that would be a perfect negative correlation. So very strong right there. Now, underneath this, just another quick question, and it says use your equation to predict the value of y when x is 20. So all we're going to do is sub 20 in for x to that equation right above there. And so I'm going to pause this, but we're just going to plug that into the calculator. And actually, if you guys have this up on the screen, I'm just going to remind you real quick, if you're in a screen you don't want to be in, just right up at the top of the calculator, close to the top, just hit second mode, just second quit, and it'll take you back to that main screen so we can do negative 20 times 20 and add that 141.4 to that. And so my answer for that question underneath there would be negative 258.6. Okay, and then we're just going to do this one more time with this example down here. So I'm just going to pause this, and the tricky part, a lot of the times if you have a question where the x value is in years, make sure you read the directions, because a lot of the times what they'll do is they'll say something like they do underneath here, let x represent the years since 1998, just to make it easier to graph. Okay, so if it's years since 1998, what I would want to actually use for my x value in 1998 would be 0. 2003 would be 5 years after that, so that'd be 5. 2006 would be 8 years after. 2007 would be 9 years after. 2010 would be 12, and so forth. So I want to use these as my x values. And that's just to make it easier to put on the screen or to type into the calculator instead of using those dates. You could also use the 1998, the 2003. I just didn't set up my graph that way. So just to get that in practice for you, make sure you're reading the directions, and I'm going to pause this and plot these points. Okay, now you guys can see my graph. I made a tiny mistake, so just ignore that one right there. What we're going to do is the same process. So I also want to show you how to clear stuff out of the stat. So I'm going to follow those same directions that I just gave you. And let me zoom in on this a little bit so we can see the calculator a tiny bit better. All right, so again, I'm just going to hit stat, and we want to edit, so we want to put these data values in here, so I'm going to hit enter. Now, this is really tricky, so what you want to do, you can type over the top of these, or if you want to clear the list out, here's what I'm going to do. Okay, do not use this delete key, just don't touch that. Okay, come up using the arrow key. I'm going to come up to the top so that that list 1 is highlighted. When you do that, there's a button right under the arrows that says clear. You're going to hit clear, and then what you're going to do is come down to the bottom and hit enter, and that will take out all those data points that you already had in there. All right, so just to repeat that, I'm going to arrow over to list 2. You want to arrow up to the top so the list 2 is highlighted. You hit clear and you hit enter, and that'll take everything out of that column. Now, if you accidentally or you don't have these lists, I just want to show you this real quick. If you're missing any of these lists, I'm going to go back to that stat screen for just a second. So I'm going to hit the stat button. if you go and you have something that you deleted or you didn't want to delete, come down here to number 5 and it says Setup Editor. That's basically going to reset this screen. So if you make a mistake or you delete a list or something on accident, just hit Stat, come down to this Setup Editor, just hit Enter twice, and then that should restore anything that you may have deleted that you didn't want to delete. So back to the stat, I'm going to edit and I'm going to put these data values in. So I'm going to pause while I do. All right, so I got my data values in, and again, I used the years since 1998. So that's why you're going to see the 058 on down the line there. And I just check, oh, and I just noticed a mistake here. I forgot the 0 on that, so I'm just going to arrow up and fix that real quick. But I always just kind of spot check and make sure my table matches in my calculator and on my worksheet before I go on. And so these look good. Now, to get the line of best fit, this is predicting what the asking price of a car would be, Toyota Corolla brand new, based on what year it is. So this actually has some meaning. So when we answer our question, it's actually going to predict something. Okay, so in this screen, you just go ahead, once you get your data in, just hit that stat button, arrow over to the calculate menu, and we want the line of best fit, so it's just number 4, and then just keep hitting enter till it shows up. Now, if you get some nasty numbers like I'm going to get here, let's just round to the nearest hundredth just to be consistent. So when I write down my equation here, see if I can scooch this up a little bit. All right, this time my slope is 607, and I'm going to go 2 decimal places, so 86, just nearest hundredth would be good. And then I'm going to put my x, and my y-intercept here is 1070.71. That's going to be my line of best fit there. And then you guys can see down here again for your correlation coefficient. This is positive, right? Positive 0.98. So this is a strong positive correlation. And if you look back at my graph, sorry, I had the calculator over it. I do have strong positive. If I wanted to kind of draw a trend line through there, kind of half above, half below, you guys can see those data points are really close to that line. So that correlation coefficient, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go 2 decimal places, and that would actually round to 0.99. So this is strong positive. And I probably should have written that on the last one. This last one was strong negative. And then use my model to predict the value of a new 2021 Corolla. So we're just going to plug. Now here's the catch. Be careful here. This is years since 1998. So don't plug in 2021. Plug in years since 1998. So that is going to be 23 is what you want to plug in for X there to get that. Okay, now remember, if you're in a screen you don't want to be in, just second quit, get out of there. And I'm going to do that 607.86, multiply that by 23, and then add the 1070.71. And so the predicted value there, let me zoom in so you can actually read what my thing says. So about 15,051 and 49 cents. That would be our prediction for that last question. And then if you guys want to look this up online, you'll see that's not the greatest prediction right now with the way car values are. They're actually a little bit more expensive, probably closer to 19,000. But you can see the estimate could be kind of close.